All right. Good evening, everybody, and then welcome back to another episode of the Penn State Turfgrass Club. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kyle Masters, and I'm the president of the Penn State Turf Club. And I'll let the other officers and advisors introduce themselves as well.
Hey guys, I'm Peyton Quistad, and I am the vice president.
Hey guys, I'm Nate Shell, and I'm the treasurer.
My name is Nate Moore, and I am the social media manager.
I think Hunter's coming in a couple minutes late, but we will keep going. Welcome back, everybody, and to our fourth meeting of the new year. For those of you who saw my email, if you guys want to stick around at the end, we're giving away a couple of free ball markers, just a random name drawing. So stick around, you'll be able to get a couple prizes. But tonight, we're joined by a very special guest, Kyle Callahan, joining us from the Thornblade Club. And Kyle will be talking tonight about the different sectors of golf course management. So welcome, Kyle, and thank you for joining the Penn State Turf Club, and thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate each and one of you taking the time out of your day to hear it and listen to me. Really, this is kind of an open one, so if anyone has any questions, we can kind of go back and forth, but really just want to dive into my experiences. As Kyle said, I'm at Thornblade Club. I've been here about 10 months, 38 years old. I'm an Oklahoma State alumni. I wish I could say we are, but I was from Oklahoma and had to go the cheap way. So unfortunately, I'm not to the pedigree of you all, and one day I'll try to get there. Maybe I can get my master's at Penn State and catch up with Latchell and the other guys that I've mentored under. Just going to kind of go through again. As you guys are going through, or gals are going through the process of internships and what's right for me, I've seen a lot of mistakes. I've done a lot of mistakes. One of the biggest things is really kind of understanding what works, what doesn't work, what's going to fit, and really figuring out who you are. But really what we're going to dive into, kind of just starting out, is what's the differences? You know, the golf club versus the country club versus private versus semi-private and management. I know you guys can all figure out what that means, but I kind of want to dive in a little bit further and let you know, so whenever you're interviewing or you're looking for your next mentor, you're kind of looking for the niche that fits you personally. As I said, I've got experience in a lot of these. Just go through real quick on my quote unquote resume, just to kind of show you that I do have experience. When I got into the turf area, I was a farm boy from Oklahoma. I had no intention of being a superintendent. I don't enjoy playing golf. I know everyone's probably has one screen on this, another screen on Golf Digest right now, a Tiger. But I started out at Hawk Ridge Golf Club. It was literally a public, what we call a goat ranch. We used to mix fertilizers together just to make a fertilizer app. 2003 to 2006 is when I really decided that I wanted to get into turf management and do this for a living. While I was there, I worked at Karsten Creek Golf Club, which is the NCAA's #1 facility. It's #1, I think, also in the state. It's Oklahoma State's practice area. So it's an endowment. It's also a public course, and also semi-private for the players. There's actually two different practice facilities. One's for the players and one's for just the normal people that come out. I did an internship in 2005 at a place called Spring Creek Ranch in Collierville, Memphis, Tennessee. This one was a private owner, him and his son, and had about 180 members. Justin Timberlake, Cameron Diaz, a few others, Jack Pate, were all members there. So it was a very upscale private. And then 2006 to 2009, I worked at Muirfield Village Golf Club under Paul B. Latchell. Obviously, that place is private, but it's also unique because Jack runs everything. So even if the club doesn't have money to do something, it tended to be that if Jack wanted a project done, we did the project. 2009, 2010, and this is kind of where my experience goes in. I had a gentleman that I had built a relationship with at Muirfield that wanted me to come to Texas. And, he said, are you ready to get away from the top 100? Is the top 100 going to bother you not working in and working at top clubs? And the answer was yes, because I saw the paycheck. And as you can see, I lasted about 11 months before I jumped back to the Midwest. But Carlton Woods, I want to say it was close to 1,000 membership. There's 2 different courses, a Fazio and a Nicholas course. It was a community full-out resort. I mean, it had the spa, tanning. It was like a 15,000 square foot clubhouse, if I could recall, on the Nicholas course. 2010 to 2014, I went to Cricket Stick Golf Club in Indianapolis. I did the BMW Championship. That one's just a private golf club. They're known for no waiting time, no tee times, 280 members. It was all about golf. I mean, the clubhouse was about as simple as it could be. The meals, the menus, it was golf driven. 2014 and 2020, I got my first superintendent's job. I believe in 16, they promoted me to director of agronomy. And that one was all the above. I mean, it was a semi-private. We had a ownership that when I tried to ask for capital money, I had to really explain even what stent meters were and what a loft on a club was. They had absolutely no idea about golf. They were more driven towards a homeowner association that they were wanting to build on the back property. It was about a 1,000-acre property. And then we sold over to a company called Dormy Network, and they have 6 clubs. They're a golf-driven network. And then so moving from there in 2020 in May, I decided to come to the country club side and work at Thornblade Club. First thing that I really want to say is, as much as I go through pros and cons, there's always the outliers. There's always the one type of ownership group that is driven towards one thing. So as I kind of go through this, don't look at this as all in one basket a la carte. I mean, there are some different ones that are outliers that do have a different model, or the club runs differently. But I would say after I called about 15 or 20 other fellow superintendents and just kind of went through this presentation and said, are these the right, or am I on the right track? Am I saying the right things? We all agreed that this is basically, in a nutshell, how it works. So again, these are based on my opinion. You can't go around saying, well, Kyle said this, so I don't want to take this job. There are the outliers. There's some good ones. And the key thing I think that I really want to take home is do your homework. Do your homework on the place that you're looking for. Ask the right questions. I know Dr. Kaminsky is really big about, we're not only interviewing you, but you're interviewing us as for a job. Really interview us. Ask the right questions. Do your homework on it. But really, when you dive into public courses and government courses, you run into a few different things. The pros are potentially has good benefits. If it's a government job, a state job, a city job, I'll just think of a couple, for example, Torrey Pines, courses up in New York and whatnot. They tend to have great severance packages, pension packages. It's really hard to pull a superintendent from somewhere like Bethpage because they're a state employee. So if you have a family, another good one is I have one of the guys that used to work underneath me. He's at Louisville Country Club. I believe that his children or anyone underneath his household gets free tuition. So some pros are really good benefits, pension packages and whatnot. You're on the public course that may not work as much, but as a whole, you tend to have more employees when it gets towards the government. Definitely expectation and stress is much less. I mean, it's all about the dollar. It's all about the revenue. It's all about getting the money in. So I would say overall, there's a lot less stress, and you know, I'm on Twitter pretty active and whatnot, and you'll see there's people that are, you know, go home at this time and do this at this time. When you go to a private club or a higher end golf club, the expectation that you tend to put on yourself is much higher. Definitely a perk if you're a golfer, which I'm not, is be able to play the course and enjoy the course. I don't think anyone at any kind of a public or state is going to stop an employee from enjoying the fruits of their labor. In my opinion, I think you're able to make a superintendent faster and make decent pay. What I mean by that is, you know, public courses, they typically don't have a lot of money to throw a budget. So, you know, they'll shoot out for a $65,000 or $70,000 superintendent's job. And quite honestly, the pool that they're going to try to pull from or whatnot, you're either going to be from that area wanting to get back closer to home, or not have a job, or you just want to advance. And that's what I meant by able to make it to a superintendent's title faster. And then this one's a good perk, less of a governance body. You don't really run into a committee, a house committee, a GM. Some of the things that we deal with here at Thornblade, I mean, there's literally 12 different committees that I have to be a part of or set in on. So the governance body and leadership of that is much less. You usually have one point person and that's it. Obviously, as I talk about the pros, there's cons to it. In my opinion, it's much more difficult for projects, closures, and improvements. So if you're really trying to build your name and show what you're capable of as a superintendent to help you advance, you can get yourself caught in a little bit of an issue there, because the best time to do some of the projects is the best time to have golf. So for example, spring and fall, if you're trying to overseed with fescue and you're trying to get your bent grass out, being able to kill the bent grass and spray something like tenacity and then turn around and seed it, and then anytime you throw seed, you're throwing extra water out, it's less likely that you're going to get permission to do those projects. You're definitely not going to see a public course or a government entity say, let's close the course down for a year and let's rebuild it to make it better, because that's dollars in revenue that they lose. It's all about the mighty dollar, and that's kind of what I'm saying. I think golf course maintenance in a public / government setting, unless they're in a contract, you're always going to be the last person. It's just like infrastructure. There's nothing sexy about infrastructure. Nothing underneath the ground excites people. They want to see something that they can see their return on investment. And that's probably one thing that you also need to write down is there's no such thing in golf course maintenance as return on investment. It's just reallocation of dollars. You know, if you buy this machinery, yes, you're going to save 2 guys, but are you really going to let those 2 guys go because you bought that one piece of equipment? You're just going to reallocate them to different areas. So as you all go through this stuff and learn, I would try to get rid of the word return on investment. That's a lot what bankers and board members are going to want to hear, but it's just a reallocation of the investments. In my opinion, there's limited advancements, especially on public courses. You're basically going to jump from one public to the next. And same with government. You're really, once you hit that superintendent's title, it's not like a city government's going to move you to another government from California to Florida. I mean, you're kind of stuck in that area. Ceiling on a pay, I think as you go into government and understand cities and states and even public courses are just going to compare to mom and pop place up the road and make sure that they're close, unless it's a little bit higher end of a public course. And then obviously with your government jobs, there's typically somewhere in the government structures where there's a cap. So your ability to continue to make money in 10 to 15 years is more or less limited. And then you also have to could be concerned with the way economy and whatnot is in a government. Is there going to be cutbacks? And where's the cutbacks? I think the easiest place to cut back, unless it's making revenue, is government, is in the golf courses. So an example of that for me would be, again, Bethpage is a whole different animal. That would be the outlier. Torrey Pines, Thomas Golden and myself just went there. They play 90,000 rounds in a year. They make over 15 to $16 million of revenue. That's a money driver for the city. So knowing how golf course management works, they're probably total investment in the course and in total investment into the property, they probably spend less than $9 million. So there's a $10 million delta profit that's being made. So that would be an outlier where they would sign a big contract with Toro and have consistent leases just to help spend that money a little bit for the government. And then in my opinion, staffing can be poor or even difficult. Again, if the pay is limited for you, what's it going to be for your staff? If you're at a public course, you may be the superintendent making 75, 80 grand, but how do you try to convince an assistant to come in at 35 or 40 based on a budget? So it's hard to get a skilled staff member in, mechanics and whatnot. And then you're also fighting with unions, the pay structures of the government, and not having, again, budget for key staff. Private clubs versus semi, I just decided to kind of compare the two. Again, I think everybody knows the difference. If you don't, semi-private is you have a due structure of a private club. So you would have 150 to 200 members that would be part of that membership, and then it's still open to the public for the rest of the people. So this was kind of a model that Victoria National ran on for a while, was having dues paying members, having assessments and whatnot, but then they opened it up to offset the revenue. Versus a private's a fully private, unless you're playing with a guest or you have an unaccompanied rate, you're separated. Private tends to be more consistent work environment. Being that it is a private club, they know that there's going to be closures. They know there's going to be openings. They know about projects. They understand projects. They understand golf course improvements. As you can see in the background, this was Crooked Stick redoing the putting green. So they went without a putting green for about 9 months. And they were okay with that because they're not worried about having the guest and guest rates and having to reduce guest rates and fees. Everyone thinks they're a boss. That kind of can be a negative with the private clubs. Being that they're all private members, some of them are equity. Equity means that they put extra money in to help build the club or build the clubhouse. They tend to feel a little bit more entitlement. So you're really dealing with 15 different bosses. And the hardest part is even though one member may not be important to you at that time, what you say and what you do at the age of 28 as a new superintendent, and then when you turn 35, if you're still at that club, if that person now becomes part of that board and that GM and you pissed him off, there's a chance your job's going away. So in a private setting, it's you really have to make sure that you're trying to treat everyone equally. And even though what we call the dirty 30, which is the 30% that always has something to complain about, you got to remember at some point, a way the board works is a 2 to 3 year rotation. So every 3 years you have a new board member. You get that one person that you upset or you decide to do something. Let's just say you decided not to make his event special and he becomes on the board in 10 years, could be your job. And I've had this phone call many times from peers of, I'm really worried I got so-and-so on the board and he brought 2 of his friends. And next thing you know, 5 years later, he's out. Another perk I feel is a perk with private clubs is, you tend to see more Christmas bonuses because it's a membership. They own the club. They have equity in the club. I definitely at Crooked Stick had perks of the tickets to games. Jim Irsay was on the course. He lived right off of hole 6. So we always got Colts tickets in the suites. We got tickets always to the basketball games and any other ones. So that's some perks that you get when you work for a private club is being that they do take ownership and they all feel like they are your boss. You tend to get some extra little perks for getting that job. It's probably something I wouldn't ask in an interview, but I think you can kind of tell when they talk to you about the membership, what the membership's made of. Definitely in private, you see more committees. That's what you'll learn later on is can be a negative. I tend to spend most of my time the last 9 months at this club in committee meetings and member meetings and presentations, trying to re-educate them on how things should work instead of how they've been. Going down again, golf, guests, and more, depending on the club, could be frowned upon. The clubs and the level of clubs that I've worked at until Thornblade have really frowned on having any additional guests. I mean, most peers want to come in for free. They want to get you to help them out or hook them up and whatnot. So it can be tough. Having a private club and knowing that it's the members club, being able to bring a few friends out or have your fellow peers want to play can put you in a bad spot. And so that's one of the tough things about a private club. Semi-private, you definitely run into them versus us. Knowing the members are paying this kind of money, they tend to like to blame the other group for more ball marks, more divots. If you've ever worked at a club long enough, you'll hear that those people don't fix this or those people don't do this or they don't rake their bunkers when it's actually both parties. I've actually seen the guests tend to be a little bit more conscious of it, but it's easy for the members, and then you're stuck in the middle of them versus us. In a semi-private, you tend not to have a boss other than the GM. Like I said, there are fewer committees. There's fewer bosses, supervisors. Everybody kind of knows their role. They know that they're a member of the club, but yet they don't have any say. So it makes life a little bit easier when you're trying to navigate through or say, hey, we're just going to close the course for the day. Basic benefits, in my opinion, there's really no perks. Like I said, you can always see new guests come in. It's nice having guests because you never know, one of them may be your next future employer. But you're not probably going to see game tickets offered and hockey and coming out to the lake or borrowing a lake house or something like that. And I would also say be careful of taking some of those perks. I mean, tickets here and there and being able to share it with your staff, but be very careful of being too greedy. I have seen people lose their jobs because they got too close to certain people wanting those extra perks. I definitely think it's easier to allow guests and peers to grab the sticks and play a little bit more with a little notice, being it is a public course. It's going to be, well, I say public, but semi-private. It's going to be easier to ask your peers, and your peers are going to want to come play and kind of do some reciprocals. I know definitely at Victoria, it wasn't asked a lot, but when it was, we were able to accommodate with that. Again, it can be money driven. It can be difficult to improve the course. Another example of that would be at Victoria National. You know, we always wanted to do big projects, but at Victoria, it was either really hot in the summer or in the winter, it was dormant. So you kind of had the spring and fall, which is about a 3-month window. Well, that was the best time for us to do drainage, winter time, get things ready. And then when we threw the Corn Ferry event in, it really threw a wrench on us because we wanted to make sure that we were primed up for the spring for the events. So we were kind of stuck. And then when money wasn't good, or, you know, if it's another perk with a private club is if you get a month of just straight rain and it's monsoons, the same dues lines are still coming in. If a semi-private's only built on 50% of the dues and the other part's the guest rounds, those guest rounds that got hit are going to hit the bottom line somewhere. And so typically what you'll have is a GM walking in saying, okay, we all got to cut, we got to cut labor by X amount. And so you're continually tracking on a semi-private versus you are private, I feel like. Management company and ownership. This is kind of what I came out of the last 6 years. It was one of the reasons that I decided to kind of move on from it. A, I was kind of burned out, and B, I thought, and I still think that I'm done with the top 100, and we can kind of talk about that a little bit later. But I was very centric on top 100 being in the Steve Rabideau's and the Paul Lashaw and the Corcoran wheelhouse. And as I'm starting to get older and have a family, I've kind of challenged myself on that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as far as goals. Pros of working at a management company. And so management company, I'm thinking if anyone's familiar, a dorming network is technically a management. You've got club corp. There's all different kind of management companies, but basically think of a management company / ownership as a single owner or someone that's made to make money. So they're not a 501c3 or a 503 non-for-profit organization. Pros are it's definitely tends to be more consistent work environment, and kind of goes back to that government. Everything's typically more structured. Definitely from an HR, it's very black and white, which can be a lot easier for you because you have the resources and the company to kind of pull from. One boss, that is one nice thing is if you need that excavator, you can just say, hey, I need the excavator. This is why. And if the money's there, they'll say, okay. Versus if you're going to a country club or a golf club or whatnot, you usually have to go through a process. You have to explain it. What's the return on investment? How much is it going to cost? What's the trade-in? You have to go through this whole process, and then it has to go through 3 different committees before it finally gets approved from the board level. With a management company or a single owner, once the decision's made, it's made, and you're moving on. From a management company, I don't know if it's really a pro on our end. Definitely when you're trying to budget it is. You can have buying power. So when you have 8 different clubs spending $300,000 in chemical, it's a game changer from being able to sign up with a Helena or a Harrell's or a nationwide account like Site One and get more discounts. With discounts means that your budget's lowered a little bit more, which means you have more buying power. The other thing is with discounts is, like at Dormir Network, for example, we bought a whole John Deere package, all 8 courses for $1 million plus a piece. So they dropped $9 to $10 million on equipment. So we were able to get more equipment for less dollars, which was a no-brainer for us. Resources. One really neat thing with Dormir Network that they do is, when we have a tournament or an aerification, they'll send in 2 people or 1 person from each course, fly them in, and so all of a sudden you'll get an influx of 8 to 10 people to come and help you out. Capital spend. The nice thing with management is they're there to make money. Well, if they're making too much money, they need to spend it. So for this purpose, I think it's really nice because if an owner has another company and this is his subsidiary, he's going to spend more money on the course and write it off as taxes. So you tend to see a little bit more influx of capital, some bunker projects that can happen. Some places it may not happen often. There's some management companies that are the outliers that they are just there to make profit and they don't care about long range sustainability. They're in for a 5 to 7 year contract and then they're out. Again, management companies, you tend to see better benefits. Just like a government, if you have a management company like Club Court, for example, they may have 1,500 employees. When they have 1,500 employees, their insurance goes down, and so it's a cost that comes back to you as an employee. So, if you're looking at and you have a family, hopefully no one in here has 8 kids yet or whatnot, or 2 wives, but if you do, you may want to look at a management company because your insurance rates for family insurance is definitely going to be much more less than it would at a private club or semi-private. And then opportunity to move around. I think the best example of that one would be someone like TPC. TPC is known for being able to have the opportunity to move around and stay within the network and go from somewhere like Arizona to Florida and whatnot. Cons, paperwork. Paperwork. I mean, anything you do, you have to report. Any comments, any issues with staff. You're consistently doing quarterly checkups. What's good, what's bad, what's indifferent. I tend to see myself in the office about 25% more than I was previous to some of the other management companies coming in. you're stuck with the discounts. So what I mean by that is, for example, I'm going to use Dormy again. They were big proponents of John Deere, and John Deere has great equipment. I, at that time, and for that place, was more driven towards Toro. I felt like it was better equipment for that property. Well, we didn't really have an option unless it was something that wasn't a cutting unit. We were stuck with that brand. So getting into a management company and ownership, if they find that, for example, Textron is a better price for them, they don't care about the service or about you as the end user. They care about the dollars. Again, it's all about making money. Cuts happen often. Decisions are made financially and not really about the experience with most of these companies. There's some that'll say we're going to be a golf centric and we're going to have cottages and whatnot. Well, then when they realize that if they don't have the heads in the beds, then they pull out. That's kind of what you run into. Capital will typically be spent based on ROI. So, like I said earlier, I hate the word ROI. I'd rather use reallocation of investments. But they're going to look at what's the return, what's the cost savings. A con that for me, especially as I kind of got more experience, was you're not your own boss. You're going to have an agronomist on top of you, or a city manager that doesn't have a turf degree. If you're working for a management company that oversees every decision, so it's almost like you have to educate everyone else just to get to the top, and then you have to re-educate again. Advancements may only be given by moving around. That can be a negative. If you want to be close to your home area, let's just say you live in New York, for example. If that's the area that you want to live in, I mean, New York is kind of the capital of golf. If you want to stay in that area and you're in a management company, they may not have another course in that immediate area. You may have to relocate. So that could be a negative. If you want to advance, you either have to get out of that network or management company, which then means that you could potentially lose out on your pension plan or 401k, or you're being invested, which I'm sure if you all still have Ross that still does it, I know he likes to get into the financial side of it. And then again, a con is one boss. I haven't personally had an issue with this, but I know I have had some people that have had a company where their agronomist or their boss says some things unethically, does some things unethically, tells them to cut some corners. Well, when you're in a management company, where do you go? When you're at a private club, semi-private club, golf club, or country club, you usually have more than one board member that has access to you. You have a chair and a co-chair. But begin when you're in a management company, if you jump over your boss's head, that could be your head when he finds out that you've jumped over him or she found out. Golf clubs, pros, it's all about golf. I absolutely love working for golf clubs. My drive, my passion to be in the top 100 at that time was all about golf. And so if you eat, breathe, and sleep golf and the conditioning, and you really don't want to deal with HOAs and tennis courts and pools and all this other good stuff, golf clubs are awesome from that aspect. You're definitely pulled in the office less. They want the golf course perfect. It's all about golf, like I said. So it's just based on performance. Definitely, I think it's a pro and a con. Expectations are much higher. You have consistency for expectation. People want to make decisions based on that, which also leads to you tend to have more care for the course when you're at a golf club. With a golf club, it's, and I'm going to jump down a couple, it's a secondary club for most people. And what that means is basically they are part of a country club where the whole family goes. And then the men or the women want to be a part of something a little bit more exclusive. So they'll join a secondary club. When they do that, they tend to care more and want that course perfect at all times. So they're going to tend to close a little bit more when they need to close. They're going to be willing to invest a little bit more as far as, hey, let's just shut it down and get it right the first time. Which then leads them to pride. You know, you really think about it, you think of the premier golf clubs out there, Marion Golf Club and whatnot. It's all about the golf course. Few committees to worry about typically with those because it's all about golf. It's a board. You have one chairman who probably will not deal with you unless you have problems, and a GM. So you're not having to deal with 5, 6, 7 different committee members that all have their own personal agenda. Cons, in my opinion, condition and expectations are higher. I mean, when they're higher, they expect everything to perfect. And we all know that we're dealing with Mother Nature. She's always going to run the roost. So limiting and pushing a course because it's all about golf. And I'm just going to use a Chicago Golf Club. They're going to want speeds at a certain speed all the time. They want it firm and fast all the time. So when Mother Nature throws a curveball and gives you 98 degrees and hot and humid, you may not be able to produce those. And that could be your job, especially if the guy up the road that may have not gotten as much rain as you did is still having perfect conditions. So you're always being compared to the Joneses, which means that there's less room for error. A con, I think, also is it's a secondary club. Kind of an example of that would be like a Hudson National. Hudson National is out of New York City, and a lot of the members who are members there have a primary club in New York City with their family. So when stocks go down or however these folks make their money, when they're looking at their bills and we run into a recession, they're typically going to drop the golf club because it's a secondary expense. So if you're already spending $1,000 for the family and the kids are able to use the pool and whatnot, and mama's there, she's happy. And then there's the other club that he goes to every weekend and spends X amount of dollars. Mama's typically going to say that's the one you need to cut. Which also means that projects cannot happen at times because of the finances and depending how we're running as an economy. You also tends to be more difficult to have guests and peers on the course. Muirfield, we always had friends that always asked, can you get us on at Muirfield? It's just very difficult at an exclusive club, and especially golf clubs to bring in guests and not be at key peak times for those who are paying. And then more hours. I feel like when you're working at a golf club, it's definitely more self-inflicted, and I'm sure you'll have many people telling you you got to balance and whatnot. But with the expectations and jobs, I think a lot of people don't relate that when you're making $150,000, $200,000 a year, for example, you just can't go find another job. It's not like being an assistant somewhere or being a store manager at XYZ place where you can just send your resume out and get another job. If you've lost that $150,000 job, you've lost your income. And if it's in the middle of the summer, you're scrambling for 4 to 5 months and hoping that you have a severance package to get you by until the next jobs. And then the hardest part is can you guarantee you're going to get another job? Because at some point you're going to have to explain why you were terminated or why you left. So those can be cons for sure. Country clubs, that's definitely where I'm at right now. That's the wheelhouse. I can speak a lot on this one. Pros, it's a more family-oriented atmosphere. I mean, you've got all different walks of life. You have people that just care about tennis, just care about pool, just care about the clubhouse, and so you tend to be involved more. I feel like country clubs, you tend, if you have something that happens within your family or the club family, that they tend to rise a little bit more. There's just more involvement at a country club. I feel like it's a more stable job for a family. So someone like myself who's trying to look at just slowing down a little bit, it's definitely it's a little bit less stress, more stable. Staffing, you can really beef up a staff at a country club a little bit more, because you can argue that you need a horticulturist, you need someone to run the pool area, someone to run tennis, more people on the course. And it gives you a little bit of flexibility that, if you have a major event, you can pull all those staff and put them into one area. Or for example, Hort, if you get 10,000 annuals in, you can take your whole crew for the day, go put them on Hort and knock that project out. So you have some flexibility with your staffing and a little bit more justification. It's an active day to day with busy clubs. So I said that it's a pro because it just kind of keeps you moving. There's really no downtimes. Usually with golf clubs, it can be slower in the summertime, dead in the winter. With country clubs, I mean, you're consistently working. Wintertime, you're removing snow for the clubhouse people. In the spring, you're getting the pool ready, you're getting the flowers ready, etc. Turnover of membership and board. Like I said earlier, you're consistently getting turnover. So it's kind of nice to see some of the newer parts of that, and the opportunities that you can get with a new board, new initiative. More involvement with the club. It's easier to sell something. Cons, more events and activities. It beats your course up pretty hard. You definitely get more opinions. You get the person that cares nothing about the golf course and just about the clubhouse, that can't believe you're cutting the tree down. And then also, there's too many membership levels. You'll have junior golf, regular golf, equity golf, seniors, tennis, pool. So it can become very convoluted really quick with 600-700 members, and really you're just trying to focus on 200 for a certain job. So throw all that in. This is kind of where Kyle and I had talked the most about, and I'm not going to dive in. Maybe you'll have questions on this, but what's best for me now that we've kind of went through this? First and foremost, no one can answer it other than you. It's not a conversation that I would recommend having with the parents or family members or whatnot. As much as they have the best interest for you, they don't understand this industry. They don't understand the different levels and the careers and all these sectors of it. They look as an accountant, but with superintendents and directors, it's a whole different thing. So really, my challenge to you all is find your own balance. I'm still at work. As soon as we get off at 6:45, I'm probably going to go get back on an excavator and start doing a project that I'm working on, because that's my passion. Working is my passion. I'm a farm kid. All I've ever known is working, right? But you all need to figure out your own balance. Everybody says, well, work-life balance. And there's people on Twitter that'll talk about work-life balance, and you don't need to work more than 40 hours. Everybody has their own sense of what that is. Figure out what yours is and figure out what sector would fit you. And stay in your lane. That's probably the other thing. Like, once you figure it out, don't jump back and forth. It's only going to frustrate you, and your resume is going to start showing it after every 3 or 4 years you're going. And so my best advice, I do this with everyone that I usually talk to, anyone that I hire, anyone that is looking for me as a mentor, is really set your goals. What are your short-term goals? What 0 to 1 year, what do you want to learn at that place that you're going to? 1 to 3 year goals, 3 to 5 year goals, and 10+ year goals. Those goals that I did at Muirfield is probably what set me on the track in the fast track that I was at. I'm kind of, you take the fast track, the chaser, and the long range, and I'm kind of all the above, and I've done each one of them, and I'll dive into that here in a second. But there is a track. It's really hard when you're in a certain level to be at the long range track, and you see your friends being on the chaser track, and you're sitting there saying, I'm 28 years old pulling a hose, while so-and-so is laughing at me because he gets to ride around in the cart all day making nearly double what I make. If you know what your goals are, you know what you're trying to accomplish, you'll be successful. I promise you. This industry, I don't care what it is. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care how many Twitter things. Work ethic and passion will get you further than anything. And that's, I just stand by that. Don't track others' careers. I've done it. A lot of people have done it. They've gotten out of the industry because of it. Goals will change, but who are going to be your influencers? That's something you got to figure out. Who can you trust? Who's going to lead you the right direction? I can't tell you how many interns I've had in AITs that I run a boot camp, and I know I run a boot camp, but after 3 years and they're ready to be out of there, in 6 years, they've become super close to me, and they call me at least once a week because they realize that everything I had said and told them came true. And so I'm just going to dive into these three. I personally feel there's 3 tracks that you can go. There's a fast track, a chaser track, and a long range. And what I mean by that is a long range is someone, and I'm just going to pick on myself. I went to Muirfield. I made $12 an hour starting out as an intern. And then we went to hybrid AIT making $16 an hour. At year 3, I was still under $36,000. I know everything's changed and numbers have changed, so I've tried to mimic that. But you know, if you want to be a top 100 superintendent, you have to go work for the best and understand the best and see the best, in my opinion. But as you can see, you may not get over that 65, 75,000 mark until 12 years from now. So if you're 22 years old, 34 years old, you may not be making more than 75. And I know there's some people out there that'll be quick to jump on that and say, that's ridiculous. That's not where the market is. But depending on what your personal goal is, this is realistic, in my opinion. And I think it's fair. But the hardest part is right here. You know, you're out of school, you're 4 years, you're a second assistant or AIT, and all of a sudden your buddy got a job up the road at XYZ Country Club. And at this point, he found that superintendent's job, got into it, and you're sitting here pulling a hose, dragging a hose, cutting cups every day, working, let's just say 10-hour shifts, while he's sitting up here. I promise you all, at some point, it will matter. And I don't know about you all, and I don't know what your goals are, but for mine, this was my goal up here. And so for me, I knew over time, and I was a little bit faster track. I was probably right in here. I jumped. But my point is at some point, it all bounces out. But think about it. If you're going to be in this industry and working until you're 60 years old, until we can actually pull retirement, would you rather be making 100,000 more a year or 40,000 more a year for 10 years? So for me, I would rather work at a lower pay, get my education, get my training, get my mentor, understand what I'm doing so I can take that big time job. And I'm just going to use a Marion or an Oakmont. I'm willing to sacrifice this short term for this long term gain. Some of you may not be. Some of you may be on the fast track where you just want to move up. And then once you find that nice job at St. Louis Country Club, you just want to get here and get up and you're fine at making 100,000. And that's okay. That's what I keep saying. Find your own balance. But just be careful, because the chaser can get himself caught or herself caught pretty quick by jumping up. And then what happens, in my professional opinion, happens here is they've tried to jump through the ladder so quick and move clubs and move baseball fields or whatever it is to get here, that when they get to this 9 years and they're on their own and they don't realize that they had the proper tutelage and understanding of all the chemistries and managing and really leading staff, they tend to lose that job, and then they're stuck down here. And once they get stuck, it's hard to kind of come back up. So, you know, I can talk more in depth on that later if anyone has any questions on this, but really just what career path do you want? What's your personal goals? you can make this chart do whatever you want. But in general, I feel like these are kind of the three that happen when I talk to my friends and my peers, and when I was going and at Muirfield, I was right here in this range, and I had friends that were already becoming superintendents at the local courses. Well, that's great, but guess what? Today, they're still on this track, and I'm well further ahead. So goals matter, and that's the thing is, it's really easy on a hot summer day, or when the boss says you can't do something, or you have to work on a day when you know you wanted to go to the beach with the family. What's your end game? So really, as we talk about this, especially knowing that everyone's in school, the interview, it's a two-way street. Know your goals before you submit your resume. If you know your goals, then you can ask the questions to find out whether this person's really in it to help you meet your goals, or is he or she just blowing smoke up your tail. It will save you a lot of time and effort on both parties and a lot of headache. I've been running into this. I have hired an assistant that wanted to be in this field, and he thinks he wanted to do this, and he knows what it is. And then all of a sudden when he hit it, he realized it's not what he wanted. It's not what he signed up for. He thought it'd be more office time. He thought it'd be more pointing fingers. So really, if you know what you're trying to shoot for, if you really want to learn more about grass and hands-on, find a superintendent that's going to be out there working on his hands with you. If you want someone that can show you how to manage from a cart, try to find that person that's going to tell you what you're going to be doing, and make sure it just matches your goals. Do your homework. I can't tell you how many people, especially, they'll send out 12 different resumes and not even know anything about your course. It's part of their class assignment. And as you're doing your homework, don't only do it on the golf course. I mean, you need to know about the golf course, but you can grow grass at anywhere, and anyone can grow grass. It's grass. It'll come back for the most part. But really find the superintendent or director that you want to work under. Look them up on LinkedIn. Look them on Twitter. Look them up on Facebook, Instagram. Look them up on the internet. You'll really find out who that coach is, and who's going to coach you and lead you. And don't be afraid to even ask, like, who have they put out in the industry, and talk to those people and see, like, was it worth it? Was it worth 4 years or 5 years of grinding for that person? And kind of see, go back. Where did it put them? If you can talk to 3 or 4 people and it's putting them on the same track that you want, you're working for the right supervisor. And then honesty and transparency. Be honest on who you are. No one can answer it but you. Make sure that it's a good fit for both of you. No need to drag out an interview process if they've already said some things that just aren't a good fit for you. Other than that, like I said, there's no right or wrong answers, but when you find your niche, stay in it. What I really mean by that is, if you know you want to be up in the Midwest, don't go chasing a job to go to Florida just to do it. I personally feel that 3 or 4 year or 3 or 4 months could be that 3 or 4 months that you needed to take you on that faster track. Going to Florida just to go to Florida because it sounds like a fun experience, or going to Royal Melbourne just to go to Royal Melbourne. If you have no career goal in going there, why waste 6 months of your life and time growing a grass that you really don't have any aspirations of ever growing? But that's what I mean by stay in your niche, stay in your lane. I put my Twitter, my Thornblade Twitter that we do here, my LinkedIn account, and my email. So that way, if you guys have any questions or want to follow me or whatnot, there's my information.
Awesome, Kyle. And we got some time to open it up for a couple questions if anybody would like to speak. I do have a couple questions for you, Kyle.
Shoot.
One, as far as you talked about working for management companies and kind of getting in that niche. How was it difficult to kind of get out of a management group and kind of go into a club, a different type of style? Like as far as with interviewing and members?
It The questions that are asked can be a challenge at times, because, you know, with the club, they're looking for themselves versus a management company. You have to look at it from a whole, right? So, you know, you may not get this project done this year because we have to go work on this project over there. But I would say overall, the benefit of working for like a management company is you get very proficient at paperwork and explanations and PowerPoint. So, you know, like this PowerPoint that I did took me 15 minutes because I just knew what I wanted. I knew how to throw the pictures in. I knew how to throw what I needed in. So, you know, some of the benefits of that, and that's kind of where maybe you look at a management company as an internship, is just to see how that operation works. Um, but overall, I would say it's all in the same. Really, where you get tossed questions on interview processes is more from a public to a private, or a private to a semi-private. And the biggest one you need to do your homework on when you're really taking big jobs is, why move to this area? You know, the biggest fear that a lot of people have is, oh, can they grow grass in this area? They've never grown it in our area. We're unique. Nothing's unique. Everybody says, oh, this highway is the rain divider. You go up the road and the same place is saying, you know, this lake does this. So from an interview side, it's really not as much from the management to that side. It's more based on location, and you've got to break that mold of, can he or she grow grass in this area?
Awesome. Thank you. And just one last question for me. You talked about your time at Muirfield, and you mentioned how a member talked to you about going to a different club, or giving you that kind of advice. And like, how do you start? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how do you start those conversations, or like kind of get into those positions where you're able to have conversations with, you know, members that you're working for? Because I feel like sometimes, just as in like through internships, like you're not, I feel like it's like a only speak and less spoken to type of situation.
You're 100% right, and I think a lot of that has to do with culture, right? I mean, so at Muirfield with Paul B, it's probably even changed from him being at Muirfield to Marion, but so let me dive into this one more time for each person. One, I would highly recommend that if you ever take a job, try not to take it after someone that's been at a club for 30, 40 years, because the culture's already been set and it's going to be really hard to break that mold, right? The second one is like at Marion, and I'm going to pick on a place just because I know my mentor well, right? But Muirfield wasn't in that great a shape when Paul took over. So when Paul took it over and he built his team, and I was fortunate enough to be on that team, we had transitioned that course so much that members were so engaged with us that I think it had more to do with our relationship with PBL, and the fact that he was more open to us talking, and the staff just got to know us because of our work ethic. And so just like at our club here, you know, we have a member called Tommy Lever. He stops and talks to all of our staff, and that's how you build that relationship, right? And so it really, in my professional opinion, it's more on who you're going to go work for. You know, if you're going to work for someone who's like, no, we don't talk to anyone, we don't look at them, we don't breathe on them, we just keep our head down, you're never going to have that opportunity, right? But you get into, and I think the culture is changing. Like D'Alessandro, I know, for example, his guys are very acclimated to the members and whatnot. And so they're always engaged in, and D'Alessandro probably gets a lot of the Oakmont members that are like, hey, do you have a guy ready? And they build that relationship. But like at Muirfield, for example, we were just out there so much, and the culture of the way Paul did things, it wasn't frowned upon. I mean, you knew where to stop, right? You didn't go ask for jobs, but you just built that one-on-one. And once you said, hey, Mr. Masters, how are you today? Hey, you just got to know each other over 2 or 3 years. And I think that's the other important thing is stick somewhere for 2 or 3 years. Your first year, you're just trying to learn the property. The second year, you're really starting to figure it out. And the third year is the year that you get to take ownership, right? So when you're jumping place to place, it's kind of hard to get to know these people. But after 2 years or 3 years of seeing the same person, they build that relationship.
Thank you. I think Luke has a question. Luke, you can unmute yourself if you got a chance.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering, could you describe the transition between going from a management group to a different type of operation? Like what difficulties may that entail that you could speak to?
I think going from a management company to another one, the hardest part was trying to figure out that balance between involvement, right? So with management companies, it's about dollars, cents, and that's it, right? And then now when you're at a country club, you've got to talk about the personal side. Like, think of this, think of how your friends are going to think. Let's get to this ranked, right? And so with a management company, you're thinking reallocation of dollars, how to make more money, what can we do to get more heads in the beds. So it's more of a transition in your mind of who's my audience, who am I trying to appease, and so that makes that part kind of difficult. But candidly, I think if you're working for the right mentor and coach, and they're teaching you the budget and having you do some PowerPoints and learning some of that stuff and putting you part of the meetings, it's not that hard of a transition, right? Because in the end, they all still care about what's the quality, what's the cost, and how long is it going to take you to do.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Kyle. I don't know if you remember me. We met at Oak Hill for the senior PGA. I guess just on that topic, what I really want to do after school is there's like a bucket list of tournaments that I'd want to do. Just saying, like, tournament experience and like your opinion. Like, what do you think with like fitting into like what we're doing after school? How important is that is that something we should be like spacing out more, or?
Oh, hell yeah. That's my life. I love tournaments. Here's my thing. So tournaments, I'm on like number 36. Like I've done too many, right? And I'm hoping to go to the US Open. Tournaments give you an opportunity to so being at the Muirfield is how I got my opportunity to go to Carlton Woods, right? And then my work experience that I did with Muirfield also took me to Crooked Stick. And my tournament experience and working some of these tournaments got me to go to Victoria National. My job at Victoria National got me here because Bland Cooper, who's the PGA Tour agronomist, they were looking for someone. They had the Corn Ferry here now, right? And so being that I was at Muirfield, and I'm using Muirfield as an example, right? But I still got to know Mike McGovern, who is in charge of the tournaments here, actually worked at Muirfield as one of the contractors. And then I built a close relationship with a gentleman named Paul Vermillion. If anyone knows him with the PGA Tour, he's the head of the agronomy department. Because of my relationship with him, he calls his agronomist and I'll say, hey, and so that's really where I built my network. Guys like, US Open, they're not going to remember you. They don't care who you are as an assistant, but like the PGA Tour guys and seeing some of those guys and relating with them will take you much further than what you think, right? And then it's a big feel good. We just went to Torrey Pines 2 weeks ago, and my members are like, oh my God, how great was it? That's so awesome that you got to go. And I almost feel bad saying, like, I was kind of bored there because I'm used to more, right? And so the opportunity to see another operation, another opportunity to network. I mean, I can't tell you how many guys I've cherry picked from them working my tournament, they see my culture, they see the team that we have, they see the work ethic, they see, you know, the Twitter and the projects and all the stuff that I like to do in-house to teach. Guys are like, hey, what would this summer after I'm done, can I come work for you? I think Kyle Masters is probably another good example of someone that's kind of done that along with you. So I would say anytime you can find, and hell, I would even throw it out and say that that would be one of my questions on my thing is like, I want to continue to do tournaments and experience it because A, you get to see something different in the middle of the season. B, you get to network and meet new friends. I can't tell you how many contacts I have through there, or, you know, I was on the STEM team and they're like, how do you get that job? And I'm like, well, you got to do this and get experience. I've been able to see a lot of things of what not to do. I've learned a lot of things what to do. I've seen different gadgets and gadgets and ways that people have customized things for their operation. So I think working a tournament is way better than hopscotching every year to get different experiences. Because if you want to go experience Florida and you're just kind of debating of, well, I could see myself living in Florida, go volunteer to a tournament down there and see if it's really something that you like. Good question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nothing? Nobody?
If you don't feel like speaking up, you can always use the chat box as well. We'll leave it open for a couple more minutes. But I just want to say, Kyle, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to speak to the Turf Club. Very great presentation, and I took a lot away from it, and I hope everybody else did as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Just again, like, don't be afraid of any of these, right? Like, they all just have their own nuances. Like, I've also learned like the grass is always greener on the other side, and so I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with other superintendents when they move, and they're like, you know, every place has its own problem, right? So with the management company, because that's two questions I've had, it sucks at times, right? And I wasn't a fan of it because I was on my own for so long that when the real management company kind of came in and said, okay, we're really gonna to spearhead this, and you're gonna have this advisor and that advisor, I hated it because I felt like I had all this time and room to do things on my own, and now I had to answer somebody, right? But it's not all bad, and as much as I didn't like that at the last place that I worked, I can't tell you how many stories, and there would be a whole nother 2-hour conversation of the issues that we're running into here that I'm at that I just didn't expect, right? Like, I could do a whole presentation on following someone that has been retired or is doing a good job and you're taking over, you know, like Chad Mark at Muirfield. Awesome superintendent. He's killing it there. But it's kind of hard to follow someone that's already doing a good job and you haven't really lost anything, right? And so the best way to be a hero for you guys is to take a job that needs help and you know you can make it better, because that stigma of comparing you to someone else is kind of gone.
Thank you. With that being said, I will stop the recording.